This is our podcast, where we belly flop into the bouncy house of mystery, surrounded by conspiracies and unexplained phenomena, with theories so bizarre, they may actually make you say,
"Are they thinking with their butt?" Welcome back, everybody. I'm Katie.
And I'm Chris.
And this is Stop Thinking with Your Butt.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome back. We hope you all had a lovely week. You're back for more
Awesomeness.
So, tell me, what's the weirdest thing that you've seen, done, or did?
Well, I thought it was a pretty cool, not that long ago, we went, took the family UFO hunting.
It was a really pleasant family outing.
Yeah.
I was a little worried that the kids would be bored.
They were not.
They were really entertained.
Yeah.
It was good.
And I had no idea what this place was, but there was at least another 24 people out there, if not more.
And the thing that was surprising is I thought we were just being a cute little family and doing like a cute little family thing. But when we got to where we were going, people had their personal telescopes, like the sizes of like mini fridges.
And cannons, yeah.
Cannons. They look like
Huge.
cannons. Huge. So it was kind of fun to see like the other sky community. I guess they would be astrologers.
Yeah.
Amateur astrologers out there.
That was a lot of fun. And then it looked a little bit like a satanic ritual at night.
Yeah.
Because the bathrooms have dark red lighting.
Apparently, the red light is easier on your eyes at night, which you should know that from military experience.
Well, it is, but I didn't.
Night optics or whatever.
Yep, it 100% is.
But it definitely did look like there was demons were being summoned in the public restrooms.
Yes. So if you do follow us on Twitter, they are posted up there. But yeah, I didn't realize that it was such a dedicated like stargazing spot that they put those in for the onlookers. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that was fun. I'd tap that again.
Yeah, and we took a picture of, or at least I took a picture of a cell phone orb that, who knows, we'll see what it is, but it was flying low. There was no lights attached to it. So I'm like, this thing's moving different than a satellite and everything else. So I took a picture of it.
Chris is like Fox Mulder from the X-Files. He's always looking.
Mm-hmm. Constantly looking.
For evidence where there may not be any.
Well, it was funny because once I saw this orb move, because, there's the conscious universe and everything else, and the C5 or something, where you can command these orbs to do certain things.
Oh my gosh, you're such a nerd.
I know. So I was like, go left in my head, or trying to connect to it.
Communicate with the orb in your mind. But I called you out on it because I looked over and I noticed that you were like meditative. And I was like, what are you doing? Knock it off. Stop it.
Yes.
Stop communicating with astral beings.
Well, because you're supposed to think about the solar system, and then you work your way to Earth, and then you work your way down to where you are located. So then you have North America, and then you have, the Oregon area, and then you have our specific, and that helps them find out where you are.
That's why my pillow's made out of tinfoil.
There you go. You are welcome.
I don't trust you.
Yeah, but every time I do
you're
this,
you're laying in bed next to me, honing in on extraterrestrials, trying to get them to come to you.
Someone has to have a hobby.
Someone lays next to you. Knock it off. So, I don't practice my knife juggling next to you.
So, what are we talking about today?
Okay. You know what else I like besides origin stories?
Uh-oh. What?
Chips and salsa.
That is true.
You know what else I like besides chips and salsa?
Burritos and fajitas.
A good disappearance.
A good disappearance. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So today, I'm going to tell you in this Katie-sode of the infamous Franklin Expedition.
Franklin Expedition. Okay. I am unaware of this. So what is that?
On May 19th, 1845. My sources are.
Oh, gosh. Yes, we almost forgot about that.
Woo!
What would we have done?
Oh, bullet dodged! History, the Canadian Encyclopedia, National Geographic's Argumundo, Parks, I don't know how...
I'm curious.
I don't know how legit that one is. Parks Canada, Pajiba, or Pahiba,
You're
also
just-
don't know that one. Historic Disaster Fandom, Wikipedia, Britannica, Smithsonian Magazine, Archaeology, British Library, and more.
What was that first? Is like the first Spanish-looking sounding one?
It sounds like a Spanish soap opera. Argumundo.
Yeah, Argumundo. I'm wondering what you got from there.
Oh, so much.
Oh,
So much. Muy más. Muy caliente más.
Okay, let's go. What do you have?
All right, so here we go with the Franklin expedition. On May 19th, 1845, the HMS Erebus, we just found out that the HMS stands for Her Majesty's Ship. So Her Majesty's Ship, so it's a naval ship, government, whatever. So the HMS Erebus, with its sister ship, the HMS Terror, which freaking awesome for a ship, right?
That's a nice name.
Sailed out of the River Thames in England, carrying 134 officers and men under the command of Sir John Franklin. Their mission, to locate and transit the fabled Northwest Passage, the long-sought pathway that would connect the Atlantic to the Pacific through Canadians' ice-strewn Arctic inlets.
Well, that's a noble cause.
It's noble, correct? Okay.
What happened?
Geography's always coming at me.
It's going England and Canada, baby. Just
I know, but 8th grade geography, it like hides under my bed at night. It like jumps out at me from the closets. It's always there.
I'm curious where you get nervous about this one.
I'm just so annoyed. The Northwest Passage
Northwest, yep.
was hypothetically going to be the quickest and safest way for European countries and its surrounding constituents to reach Asia. Traveling overland was getting too risky and too dangerous. So traveling from Europe over to Asia across land was not only crazy expensive because you had to get a party together.
Yeah.
The trade caravans were often subject to raids, thefts, and murder. So the risk of just getting it there, getting the material to Asia to trade, and then to bring it back.
Yeah, you almost have to have, because the Panama Canal wasn't
It wasn't a thing.
At the time. So I'm wondering if they would go kind of in those areas and then offload everything from the ship, transport to the opposite side, and then load a new ship, and then go from there over.
One of their trade strategies ended up having everything going through Italy. But because, I know, I'm not quite sure why, but it was like because the Ottoman Empire was controlling a lot of the trade route, and so they made an agreement with Italy. So then trades were coming through Italy, but Italy was like skyrocketing the prices. They were really taking advantage of their place in the trade route. So then England was like, screw it. We can't go east. Let's figure out how we can go west. But big problem with going west is that big ass North and South America
blocking everything.
Are taking up the entire part of the globe.
That's insane. Think back in the day when you're in Europe and you know of Asia, apparently.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, we're going to try to go there. And then there's an entire continent blocking between you and Asia.
Well, it takes years to get there.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, I would like to get a rug. In 5 years, this rug's going to look really nice with all the blood on it. Right?
That's too far.
It's too far. Now, the new problem arises. Big ass North and South America. Can't go over it. Can't go under it. Sure as hell can't go through it. You have to go around it. And if you're looking on a map, you'll see that why going south around the Horn of South America just doesn't make sense. It is just as long. The time and resources it would take to go around the Horn. You might as well just go across land.
Yeah, it's by Antarctica, so it's just not a fun place to be.
Well, so is going north. You're by the North Pole.
Oh, yeah. Touche.
So, yeah. So it's risky either way, but it was a lot longer going south.
Yeah, true.
Especially from England.
Yeah, that makes sense.
South. It would cost you so much time and resources that you'd better off just going across land. The only solution, the only way would be to go northwest. Here's the problem with going northwest. No one has ever been northwest and made it through to Asia. Spoiler alert. The first successful traversing of the Northwest Passage didn't occur until 1905.
1905, that's okay.
And when did I tell you the story's taking place?
1845.
1845.
See, I'm listening.
Okay.
You know,
If that's not a foreshadowing, I don't know what is. Before I tell you more of the story, let's meet the captain, and a few of the crewmates.
First did any of these captains or crewmate have in the historical documents say amateur?
No.
Good. So that's a positive.
No, there was no amateur. Actually, a lot of these are quite career.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one, the captain in particular, who has a past that I don't know if it could
zoologist.
No, it's not zoologist, which would have been fine. It's not really a colored past so much as like a situation that went awry. So he can't really boast about it, but he kind of gets bragging rights, and I'm not sure if it's something that he should be proud of. I'll tell you all about him. So Sir John Franklin was a naval officer and Arctic explorer. He joined the Royal Navy in 1800 at the mature age of 14.
Wow.
And a lot of these guys are joining 11, 12, 13, 14. Can you imagine?
Different times. Different times.
Franklin served on an expedition of the Australian coastline under his uncle Matthew Flinders.
Mm-hmm.
Franklin saw naval wartime during the Napoleonic Wars and the War of 1812. He even sustained an injury during the British offensive against New Orleans in 1814, to which there's no mention of it made ever again. So I'm presuming that he just made a full recovery.
Okay, yeah. But he's a war hero.
Yeah, but he's a war hero. That paper cut.
Well, who knows what type of injury? A lot of injuries heal.
Yeah, who knows? So he's injured in this offensive, and
he just didn't
presumably
lose an arm.
makes it. Yeah, doesn't go blind, doesn't lose a limb, nothing's sawed off, everything's quite in place. So this is where the humble brag comes in.
Mm-hmm.
He almost starved to death during an overland expedition, and he becomes known in the press as the man who ate his boots because he literally ate the leather off of his shoes to survive.
What? Like, I get it. No, I don't get it. How do you eat leather, and how does that sustain you?
And
like, I've heard eating bark.
I've heard of eating leather before.
But what's in it?
It's animal hide. There has to be some sort of nutritional value. If nothing else, it puts something in your stomach so your stomach's not eating itself.
I feel like there's better options.
I feel like it would cause constipation. I don't know.
It's just, I'm glad he,
So
he did whatever he needed to do to survive.
So some men did die, but him and the ones that survived literally ate their boots. I don't know if that's a humble brag. I don't know.
Literally
if that's...
had bodies around him, and he decided to eat boots.
Hold that thought. During Franklin's early years, he developed an aptitude for land surveying and natural science. This skill would guide the remainder of his career. He eventually goes to explore and survey coastlines all over North America, and he's even knighted in 1829.
Okay.
For his service in land mapping and surveying and just...
Well, I guess if they tagged him to perform this task, this is a pretty significant task. So, okay.
So he eventually retires his life at sea and becomes governor of Van Diemen's Land, which is today's Tasmania.
Equally as scary as the first name.
During his governing of Van Diemen's Land, things were going horribly. They were going terribly. He hated it. He was reportedly bad at it.
It happens.
There was political scandal all over the place, and his reputation was totally ruined. But some contributing factors as to why it went so bad is, what do you know about Van Diemen's Land or modern day Tasmania?
Well, just based off the names, it doesn't sound like a fun place to live. There's probably rabid animals, or the Tasmanian devil, I think, lives there. Or
okay, Tasmanian devils, where are they from?
I would assume Tasmania. No.
Which is?
Hell.
Motherfucking Australia.
Oh my gosh. It is.
And what was going on between 1788 and 1868? Australia was a prison.
Oh, was that? I had no idea when Australia became a actual country.
So during this time, 1788 to 1868, this is where all the prisoners were being shipped off. So Franklin was literally an overqualified prison guard, and he hated every minute of it.
Yeah, that makes it even more scary, and that makes more sense on why.
Isn't that awful? Like, can you even imagine being like this decorated war hero turned prison guard?
How much effort do you think that they put into that too? Like, if I was a governor, stop your yapping.
Yeah.
Get back to work.
Yeah. I can't even
Put it in the
imagine
complaint
what the
box.
conditions were like. Yeah. So eventually he's recalled back to England by the colonial office and set about trying to put his life back together, kind of clean up the mess that had happened. And his wife throughout this whole thing is like extremely encouraging, and she ends up being kind of like a heroine in this story, but she's a badass. But eventually, and it's even said of Franklin that he was an extraordinarily heroic figure, but tarnished by politics.
The Australia politics.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
So his wife, Jane, I guess knew all the right people in all the right places, and she continues to lobby and beg for her husband to be sent on a last expedition in hopes to repair his reputation.
She was basically a nowadays influencer.
Pretty much. She was. She was a mega influencer of the time. So with her lobbying and plea bargaining or whatever, or vaginaing around.
I wasn't going to say it, but, whatever gets the deed done.
He was granted an expedition.
That's love.
So this was, would you put out in Parliament for me? I don't even need you to answer that. I know you would, you hussy.
No, I would ask you, hey, get my reputation up. Get me likes.
Get me likes.
Go door to door.
Yeah. So this would be his 4th Arctic expedition, his 3rd as commander, and unfortunately, his last expedition.
I think after you had that one where everyone died and you're eating your boot, I would settle down and do something different. Like, check the box on almost dying.
He's a hero.
Well, I know, but
he must have still gotten the shit done.
Or his reputation was so tarnished for other things. I get it, but like there's other things in Australia that may have happened.
Well, so it's like when things aren't going well, what do? You fall back on what you know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so try and make a comeback.
Yeah, it's kind of like Comeback Kid, yeah.
And if you're going to come back, you better go on the most, you got to really come back.
Mm-hmm. At this point in history, this is now being called the Franklin Expedition. He is commander of this Arctic expedition. And this expedition, at the time, would be the best prepared for mission to have ever been.
This seems like a very noble quest.
Yes.
My lord, from the king himself.
Exactly. So the 2 ships, well, the queen herself, the 2 ships, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror, were specifically fortified to withstand the Arctic conditions. The hulls were reportedly reinforced so thoroughly that they were twice the thickness. Mm-hmm. The ships were also equipped with steam engines, which were some of the first.
Yeah, especially 1845.
In addition to the sails, so they could sail and steam through the ocean. And the ships were also equipped with desalinators.
What is it? Is that?
It makes the ocean water drinkable.
What?
I didn't even know that they knew those existed back then.
History is so weird. Like every time you're like, how long ago did they actually discover these things?
Freaking forever ago.
Seems like it.
It's really cool. And the ships also had a heating system going to the Arctic. It's a great thing to have. And some of the first canned good rations.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
So it had been around for a little while. So like maybe a couple decades.
I bet you the sailors from like 20 years ago from 1845 were like, look at those glamping.
Glamping.
Back in my day, we didn't have heated.
Well, they're all getting ready for this expedition. And then there's like the old sea dogs standing on the dock and they're like missing eyes and legs and their hands are all frostbitten. They have one finger, probably their pinky.
Yeah. Look at those youngins with their canned food.
Yeah, with their canned food. One of them is chewing on a boot, literally. Yeah. Chewing on a boot. Okay.
That's why I would not want to be in the Navy back then.
So I'm going to give you this side note, and it's going to come into play later, but it's really important. Okay. So I need to mention it now. In April 1845, in preparation for the expedition, the Stephen Goldner Company is awarded the contract to supply the expedition's tinned food.
That's nice.
The Goldner Company was only allotted a mere 7 weeks to fulfill an order of 8,000 tins of food. And it's later found that the tins had an abundance of lead soldering that was sloppy and dripping, which may have been a contributing factor to the health conditions of some of the crew on board.
That's why you never rush a job.
So I thought this was interesting. I found the supply list for the ships.
Okay. Let's hear some of these.
I'm going to give you the total number. You can roughly cut this in half, and it'll be the amount per ship. So between the two ships, there was 36,000 pounds of biscuits. 36,000 pounds of biscuits. 137,000 pounds of flour.
To make more biscuits.
30, never have enough biscuits. Where's the tea on here? Hold on, let me find the tea. Oh, 24,000 pounds or 2,400 pounds of tea, 9,400 pounds of chocolate, 147 bushels of peas.
I don't know why I was
1,000
thinking.
pounds of raisins.
Well, so you were mentioning chocolate. I don't know why. Like when I think of chocolate nowadays, I'm like, it's like, or from back then, it's like, oh my God, it's like the golden, nugget. Like no one ever has hot chocolate.
Oh, it's
pretty common, I guess.
It's still. I think during this time, it's still like a treat.
I can just see some poor beggar kid running down the street, like, please, mister, give me something.
A morsel of chocolate, sir.
What is this? Why does it taste so sweet and good?
Well, the chocolate back then reminds me of like some of the chocolate that we've tried now that's supposed to be like authentically,
oh gosh,
like, I don't know, pick a name of the country, and it tastes like dirt. It tastes too earthy.
It tastes like poverty candy.
Yeah. Chris calls it poverty candy.
It did not taste good at all.
Yeah, and then there's 3,600 gallons of spirits, 200 gallons of wine for the sick.
Good. For the sick.
Yeah, and then you get soup concentrates, so 20,000 pints of soup concentrates. You got vinegar, barley, oats, marinades, cranberries, mustard, pepper, and things like that. I'm not going to go through all of them, but that's,
a lot of food stuff.
a lot.
Okay. Did they bring like chickens or...
I'm going to tell you, because this was super new to me, and I was really excited about that. So in addition to all these supplies, each ship is equipped with a desalinator that will produce fresh drinking water.
Awesome.
So now that the canned foods are prepared, the ship's larders have been stocked.
What is a larder?
The storage compartments. It's called the larder.
Look at you. Yeah. Did you already know that, or did you find that during your research?
I knew that.
I should know that.
On May 19th, 1845, the expedition leaves Greenock, England, with a crew of 24 officers and 110 men.
Mm-hmm.
After a little more than a month into the voyage, on June 30th, a note is deposited from the Erebus at the 66th parallel. When the HMS Erebus reached the 66th parallel, Sir John Franklin, who was under orders from the Admiralty to leave notes at various points in their journey, he writes a note, signs it, places the note in a tube, then places it in a barrel, seals it, and tosses it overboard.
I was going to say that jokingly, but I was like, they put the note in the bottle.
1845, note in a bottle, in a barrel, overseas.
Message sent.
Message sent.
Wow. That's crazy.
Isn't that kind of fun?
It'll wash ashore sometime.
Yeah, it'll get to where somewhere. I don't know.
Will. They probably tested that before. So
the Admiralty is the British government department that's responsible for the Royal Navy, and that's technically Franklin's boss. So they gave him some instruction along the way. Leave notes at such and such place, whatever.
I still think it's just with astronomy, like how they even knew they were at the 66th parallel.
Yeah.
Right? Just crazy.
It's cool. Yeah. So the note read, HMS Erebus, 30th of June, 1845, latitude 66 degrees, longitude 54 degrees, in company with HMS Terror and transport Burrito Jr., coast of Greenland, 95 miles, all well, John Franklin, commander, captain, a Danish brig in company.
How did a burrito get involved? I found my burrito. He's just
not
following
burrito,
us.
Burrito. It's 1845. They haven't discovered the golden burrito yet.
They're in Greenland.
You're a mess. So we know that the note said that because it was discovered 4 years later. They find the barrel.
Yeah. And
it's discovered 4 years later during a Franklin Party search expedition.
Oh, when they're searching for them.
More foreshadowing. Initially, I thought I thought it was these two ships that went out together.
Yeah.
So I'm like, who the heck is the burrito?
That's what I said.
Who is Burrito Jr.?
Pirate ship.
So I'll tell you in just a second. So June to July, the crew writes letters home, and 5 sailors and all the unneeded supplies are sent back to England.
Notice how you said unneeded supplies and unneeded sailors.
Yes.
You're either sick or they're like, oh, you're only 12 and you're a child.
Yes.
Man.
So an interesting note that's added in some of the reports that I came across was that the letters home stated that Captain Franklin had banned swearing and drunkenness on board, which I thought was admirable.
Unless your crew is like, come on.
Maybe.
The morale may go down depending on what else.
But I thought that was noble.
Yeah.
So the burrito Barreto, I'm going to call it Barreto, so you don't get Barreto.
No one's confused. We got it.
Was to carry stores of supplies, provisions, and clothing, which would then be transferred to the expedition ships, the Erebus and Terror, once they had arrived in the Arctic. This allowed a larger amount of supplies to be brought on the expedition without overburdening the main vessels, and helped safeguard supplies for the journey across the Atlantic. Barreto Jr. also carried live cattle to be slaughtered for fresh meat.
There you go.
The Barreto Jr. was accompanied by 2 steam tugs that helped tow Erebus and Terror to Greenland, the Rattler and the Blazer. All 5 ships arrived in Disco Bay off of Greenland on July 4th, 1845. The Barreto Jr. stores were transferred to the 2 expedition ships, and on the 12th of July, Barreto took the mail from the personnel of the expedition. One of these was a paper written by Harry Duncan Spence Goodsir, and it was called On the Anatomy of Forbesia.
What does that translate to?
Butterflies, moths, insects.
Okay.
Something like that. And this paper actually does get published 5 years later. 5 men of the expedition also returned to England aboard Barreto Jr. William Atkin, a Marine on the Terror, John Brown, an able seaman from the Terror, Thomas Burt, an armorer from the Erebus, Robert Carr, an armorer from the Terror, and James Elliott, a sailmaker from the Terror. It wasn't actually specifically confirmed why these men left the ship. A couple stories say they were sick or ill-bodied, and some said they was ill-tempered. So ill-tempered or ill of body. Either way, these 5 men get sent back, and it's actually for their benefit in the long run.
Yeah.
So these men had been signed on to the HMS Erebus or HMS Terror in 1845 for the expedition, but for one reason or another, they were dismissed from service and sent back with the Barreto Jr. Later that month, in July 1845, the ships are seen by a whaling vessel called Prince of Wales in Baffin Bay by Captain Dannett and his crew, and another whaling vessel called Enterprise by Captain Martin and his crew. This is the last time they'll be seen for 175 years.
Wow. I was just thinking how awesome it would be to have a ship called the Enterprise.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that cool? Isn't that also Star Wars? Or Star Tours? Not Star Tours.
Star Tours.
Star Trek. Not the Disney ride.
Yes, Star Trek.
The Disney ride for your mind. Star Trek. The Barreto Jr. Returns to Deptford, Kent on August 11th, 1845, and gives a report that Franklin's men were confident and in good health.
They were suffering from overconfidence.
Early September, after circumnavigating Cornwallis Island, the expedition, now consisting of HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, anchor at Beechy Island off Canada and prepare for winter.
Okay.
And this was fascinating to me. The ship literally winterizes. All the masts are brought down, and then a huge canopy or tent is put over the ship. Oh. And then they install stoves for heating. They pack snow around the ship for insulation.
It's like an igloo.
They iglooize it.
Well, actually, we just watched Alone. Not only they pack the snow, they get water and they pour it on it, so it may melt it, and then it freezes, and now you actually have.
Yeah, so it doesn't say that they did that, but they.
But that's how you would.
They put a tent over the ship, literally. That's awesome. It was pretty cool how they enclosed it, and then they installed the stoves. Yeah, it was really cool. So they're literally hunkering down for the winter, and this was totally planned. They knew that this was going to have to happen. Planned. 1846, January 1st. Terror's chief stoker. So the stoker is the person who's in charge of feeding the furnace to get the steam engines going, or the engines for the ship. So January 1st,
stoke it real good.
Terror's chief stoker, John Torrington, dies.
Oh.
He's the first casualty of the expedition.
Notice how I was in a positive mood a little bit?
And I was really disappointed to have to break that to you.
Okay, I thought, oh no.
I know. John Torrington died 7 months into the expedition and was buried on Beechy Island. Canada. John Torrington was born in Manchester, England in 1825. In May 1845, at the age of 19, he joined the Franklin expedition and was assigned to the HMS Terror as leading stoker.
How old?
He was 19.
I was thinking he died of old age. What happened?
Well, okay. He had a younger sister, Esther Shaw Torrington, born in 1826. John and Esther were baptized on the same day, December 10th, 1826. John's mother, Sarah, died in 1833 when John was 8 years old. In 1836, William Torrington, John's father, remarries a widow named Mary Hoyle, who became John and Esther's stepmother. Mary had 2 sons from a previous marriage, William and James Warren. His original grave marker read, "Sacred to the memory of John Torrington, who departed this life January 1st, A.D. 1846, on board of HMS ship Terror, aged 20 years. 3 days later, January 4th, Erebus sailor John Hartnell dies.
Oh, another one.
John Hartnell was the oldest of 6 children, 5 of whom survived past infancy, which I'm like, the fact that they had to say that. Having a child before 1950 was such a risk.
Yeah.
So he was the older brother of a fellow Erebus seaman, Thomas Hartnell Jr. So him and his brother were serving together. Isn't that nice?
No, that's good.
In the spring of 1845, Hartnell and his brother signed up for the Franklin expedition as able seamen aboard HMS Erebus. On this expedition, he had his pay allotted to his mother.
Oh, that's nice.
That was nice. He was healthy enough to be allowed to continue the journey past the last known sighting of the Erebus and Terror off the coast of Greenland and Disco Bay the summer previous.
Do you think that if the ship goes away, I wonder how they deal with the payment of that? I'm sure there is like some type of, if in my death, or they know people are going to potentially die, so they probably have it all figured out.
By mid-November, John Hartnell's health was in rapid decline. He was suffering from a zinc deficiency, of which symptoms include poor wound healing, loss of appetite, fatigue, weight loss, night blindness, and increased risk of infection.
It's kind of redundant. Night blindness.
Night blind. You can't say blind, I guess.
Night blindness. It's very old thing
24/7 blindness. At an earlier date, he had injured an ankle, had an infection in one of his feet, sustained a shoulder injury, and had a compressed cervical vertebrae in his neck. His overall cause of death may have been a combination of tuberculosis and pneumonia.
It sounded like he fell off something really tall.
I was like, it sounds like he had a fall.
That's almost like this guy, gets hit in a car accident, and he's on the motorcycle,
Must
right?
have been COVID.
Must have been COVID. Good God, man. Yeah. COVID was a factor.
So John died on Beechey Island on January 4th, 1846 at the age of 25, being the first of the Erebus crew to die. After his death, he was autopsied aboard the Erebus, presumably by anatomist Henry D.S. Goodser, who also authored that paper on the butterflies.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
Humans, butterflies.
Humans, butterflies. Doctor is a doctor. He was probably also a zoologist.
Exactly.
April 3rd, Private William Brine dies. William Brine was born in March 1814. William was one of 7 children, including 6 brothers and 1 sister. Being the 3rd eldest, Brine joined the Royal Marines in December of 1833, signing on as a private. In the recruiting book, he was described as being 5'10", with a slim stature and gray eyes. And it was either mistakenly written or he lied and gave his age as 20. And rather than signing his name, he marked his signature with an X, suggesting that he may have been illiterate.
Yeah.
He married Eliza Wood on October 31st, 1841 in Woolwich. There were no records of children from their marriage, and in the spring of 1845, Brine signed up for the Franklin expedition on the HMS Erebus. He unfortunately passes on April 3rd, 1846, 11 months into the expedition. When it gets to the spring in April or May, the ice thaws around the ship and the expedition is able to leave. They leave Beechey Island and sail south through the Peel Sound. Where is Beechey? So all of these are above Canada. There's like a sprinkling of islands.
Okay.
And in the winter, it all ices over and they all like connect essentially into one big landmass.
So when I'm trying to get the timeline now. So when they leave to when they bunker down, how long is that between?
It's 11 months.
Ooh, so 11 months and...
Yeah.
Okay.
So from the time they left to the time when they get iced in and they can continue is 11 months.
Okay.
I think it's like 2 or 3 months from England to Greenland. And then from Greenland, they're able to explore for a few months before they get iced in.
Okay.
So they're exploring now through the Peel Sound. In August, the expedition attempts to sail around the east side of King William Island, and they are blocked by walls and sheets of ice. Mm-hmm. And they lose sight of one of the ships.
Ooh.
With these walls of ice and the losing of one of the ships, they're forced to turn back. And it doesn't ever say like what ship was leading. I'm assuming it was the Erebus because that's the one that Captain Franklin is on. Mm-hmm. So they end up turning back, reconnecting with the Terror. But as they continue their travel, they encounter more ice off of King William Island.
Yeah, and that ice can get super thick.
It's ship-destroying thick.
Yeah.
So at this point, no, it seems like no matter which direction they go, they're being blocked by ice. So it's September 12th, the ships become stuck in ice off of King William Island, and they decide again to prepare for winter. It's September. It's getting to that time.
Yeah.
They probably thought they could have gone further, but we're stopped by ice. Because there's been no notes found or signs or further sightings of the exploration team, concern starts to develop back in England. But the Admiralty keeps saying they have enough food and provisions for 3 years, so we're not going to worry until at least 1848.
Oh, until 4 years later?
Yeah.
Because even though they have food for 3 years, they could probably forage for
We're not going to worry about it. We're not going to worry about it. So in 1847, spring comes. Mm-hmm. But the ice doesn't thaw this time. Concern over the Franklin expedition begins to grow, and a whaler, William Penny, attempts to make contact with the missing expedition. So he's instructed just to go see if he can make sight. He's a smaller ship. He's a smaller ship. He can move faster. If they're out exploring, they're not going to go far. He can get to the area and then come back with a report.
Yeah, well, good on him for checking it. But I'm just thinking if you're on the expedition and you're hunkering down and there's no one around, that would end freezing, miserable.
Yeah,
not fun.
So William Penny, the whaler, doesn't make sight. He cannot find sign of the ships, the Erebus or the Terror, and he reports this back. And so the Navy begins to show concern, and they start kind of putting together a plan for a relief mission. There's going to end up being at least 40 attempts to locate this missing party, and they never find anything. Mm-hmm. So the Franklin party has now been stuck in ice for 8 months, and they start to contemplate what to do if the ice never melts, never lets them loose. So they establish a sledge party.
What is a sledge party?
So a sledge is like a sled.
But
bigger, heavier, more badass.
Got it.
So it's hypothesized later down in the line when things come to light that they were using, because the life rafts weren't worth anything stuck in ice.
Yeah.
So it's hypothesized that they filled a life raft with supplies and towed it across the ice.
Okay. And you would think too, if they were going to be maybe make land, they may even have a sled on board.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really say what they used. It's hypothesized that it was lifeboats that they used, but a sledge, and they're calling it a sled. They're calling it a sledge. Even though they had sleds and sleighs, they're calling it a sledge because they're more heavy duty. Mm-hmm. So on May 24th, Lieutenant Graham Gore, first mate Charles Desvaux, and 6 sailors were chosen to walk across the ice to explore the west side of King William Island, leave notes in cairns, and then return to the ship after they had completed their mission. This small party is eventually referred to as the Gore Party. I didn't know what cairns were, and it was pretty cool to not only find out what they were, because I actually, now that I know what they are, I've seen them before, but I didn't know that they had a specific purpose.
I don't know what a cairn is either.
A cairn, it's like a tower, it's like a pillar, like a pyramid of stones. And you would take the stones off the top, almost like a cachet, and you'd leave a note in, or a cache.
Oh, yeah. That's like how they used to mark things on the road, side of the road.
So they would use these cairns as like mailboxes.
Look at you knowing all these different terms.
Yeah. So they would use cairns that were either set up by previous expedition parties. Yeah. Because no party has gone as far as they're planning to go. Mm-hmm. So there's been people generally in their area, but never as far as they've been trying to go. So there's cairns all along King William Island. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Gore. Graham Gore was born in Plymouth, England in 1808. And I felt really bad for this guy because I could not find a lot on his history. He was either born in 1808, some sources say 1809, one source said 1806, and like where he was born, it was either Lancaster or Plymouth.
Okay.
And he was the second eldest of 6 children. He came from a long line of distinguished naval officers. He was the 3rd most senior officer on board after Captain Sir John Franklin and Commander James Fitzjames. So the third highest ranking officer. And looking at his picture, he seems like a really nice, fun guy. Like, I want to be friends with him.
Okay.
So it's sad to me that I don't know more about him because he looked like, you know, if you look at somebody, like he looks like a kind person. I don't know, but that could have been just deceiving.
Is it like an actual picture or is it like artwork? No,
it's an actual picture. So on the docks, the day of the departure for the expedition, 12 officers had their pictures taken. Maybe we'll attach that to the show notes, their pictures, because they're all there.
That's interesting because it said there was 24, so I wonder if the 12 are just from one ship.
Maybe, possibly.
Yeah.
And it was volunteer. I think it was volunteer basis, or maybe just what they had time for. Because back then, for photos, they weren't like in, out, in, out. It was like sit for 30 minutes, wait for the flash to, you know. So after 4 days of walking, the Gore party reaches Victory Point, and they deposit a note in the cairn there. The cairn is originally called Sir James Ross's Cairn at Victory Point. The Victory Point note reads, 28th of May, 1847, HMS ship Erebus and Terror wintered in the ice in latitude 70 degrees, longitude 98 degrees, having wintered in 1846 to 47 at Beechy Island in latitude 74 degrees, longitude 91 degrees, after having ascended Wellington Channel to latitude 77 degrees and returned by the west side of Cornwallis Island. Sir John Franklin commanding the expedition. All well. Party consisting of 2 officers and 6 men left the ships on Monday, 24th May, 1847. Graham Gore, Lieutenant. Charles F. DeVoe, mate.
So that's May 47. So we know that they're alive at that point.
After another full day of traveling overland, May 29th, the party stops for the night at what is now called Gore Point, and they leave another note.
I'm surprised that when they say, hey, all is well, they don't mention the 3 people who've already died at this point.
They're just casualties of an expedition, I guess.
Yeah, I guess that's the normal thing. Even over land, people die. Okay.
At this location, there was no cairn, so they built one from scratch. And after it was complete, they left a note inside before trekking further south. The small party continues on foot once again, and after a few days, late May, early June, the Gore party reaches Cape Herschel on the southern coast of King William Island. They deposit a note there before heading back to the ships. So that's end of May, early June. June 11th, Commander Sir John Franklin dies of unknown causes. Captain Francis Crozier, captain of the Terror, now becomes the new commander of the expedition.
So that's like the main guy who just died.
That's the guy.
And he just self-inflicted, you think?
No. I don't think so. Currently unknown causes. The interesting thing, and so part of me, I really don't think...
A mutiny?
I was like, I really don't think it was a mutiny. I really just think it was something just natural, unfortunate, you know, heart attack, who knows, cancer, pneumonia, tuberculosis, who knows. But an interesting thing that I'm going to mention is that Crozier, the new commander, was born in 1796 Ireland. He was the 11th of 13 children, and at the age of 13, he joined the Royal Navy. In his career, he captained 8 ships, and made several polar expeditions. He would have been 51 at the time. So he's 9 years younger than John Franklin. But the thing that really sucks about Crozier's history is that he was actually selected to be commander before Franklin. But the British said they'd be damned if an Irishman found the Northwest Passage.
Well, why? Okay.
They refused.
So they made him second in command.
So they made him second.
Irony.
Isn't that right?
Well, you know what? They both get their wishes.
Yeah.
You know, he took command and an Irishman never found him.
So June to July, a camp is established at Cape Felix. And I guess this was a common practice. If a ship was wintered down or even anchored out in the ocean and they were going to be there for a while, they would set up a camp on land to do research or whatever the F they were there to do. Yeah. So in this instance, they were using it for, the camp was used for magnetic observations. It has to do with compassing.
Yeah.
I really don't know. I was trying to figure it out. I just couldn't wrap my head around it.
No, because, they're close to the North Pole or something.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So late December, early January, the men from the summer camp make a hasty retreat back to the ships. It never says why. I'm assuming weather.
Yeah.
I'm assuming like the weather was coming in hard or something.
A Yeti.
Yeah. I'm like, that would have been cool.
Run.
I wish it would have said something like that. No. Now, 1848. It's a new year. January.
Food's running low.
Erebus and Terror have been trapped in ice for 16 months.
Horrible.
The officers begin debating what to do about their situation. April 22nd, 4 months later, after 18 months trapped in ice, Captain Crozier and 104 sailors decide to abandon ship. Load up as much as they can in terms of food and supplies in their sledges and drag them across the ice, heading for the nearest known Canadian trading post located on King William Island, 800 miles away.
800 miles.
In the Arctic winter.
That's a long time.
You remember how I said that?
Think of this too. If they did 20 miles a day, it would take them 40 days to get there.
20 miles a day.
That's
dragging
your food,
all their material. And I'm going to tell you about their condition. There's no way in hell they would make it 20 miles. Remember how I mentioned that they left a note at Victory Point, the Goer party, this small search party that went out at first and left notes in the cairns? When they decided to abandon ship, they came across Victory Point again and updated their note. Okay. So their note now says, 25th April, 1848, HMS Terror.
This is not looking good.
No, 1848, HMS ships Terror and Erebus were deserted on April 22nd, 5 leagues northwest of this having been beset since the 12th of September, 1846. So beset in ice, stuck in ice. The officers and crew, consisting of 105 souls under the command of Captain F.R.M. Crozier, landed here in latitude 69 degrees, longitude 98 degrees. This paper was found by Lieutenant Irving under the cairn supposed to have been built by Sir James Ross's in 1831. 4 miles to the northward. There it had been deposited by the late Commander Gore in May 1847. Sir James Ross's pillar has not been, however, found, and the paper was transferred to this position, that in which Sir J. Ross's pillar was erected. Sir John Franklin died on the 11th of June, 1847, and the total loss by deaths in the expedition has been, to this date, 9 officers and 15 men. James Fitzjames, Captain, HMS Erebus, F.R.M. Crozier, Captain and Senior Officer, and start off tomorrow, 26th, for Backsfish River, 800 miles away.
It's not looking good.
It's not looking good. Because this note that they left at Victory Point is the last documentation that the Franklin expedition has ever made. The rest of the tale has been pieced together over decades by archaeological discovery and the Inuit people. It's believed that the men pulled approximately 8,000 pounds worth of material over the ice and rock through horrific temperatures. And unfortunately, they never did reach civilization. So in 1848, search parties are sent to discover the fate of the Franklin expedition, not knowing that the party's fate had already been sealed. 1850, Lady Jane Franklin relentlessly lobbies for her husband's discovery and is finally able to get the government to set a 20,000 pound reward for anyone who would assist in the Franklin expedition. 10,000 pounds for any information that would lead to their relief, and 10,000 pounds to anyone who could ascertain the party's fate. And this turns out to be close to $1 million today.
Yeah, there's that influencer again.
Yeah. So among ladies,
I'm sure she's having a hard time while, the husband's
I'm sure
out at
she is.
She is, I know.
You're being sarcastic.
No, it would be horrible. No. Sorry. There could be two things mutually the same.
You think she's happy that he's missing?
No, I was just commenting how much of an influence she had. But at the same time, now in retrospect.
Are you talking about whoring?
No. Yes, it would be very sad. 100% for any of those.
It's only solidified how sad.
Yeah.
And how much she did love her husband and want him back. Because in over 200 of her personal journals that were recovered, there were 2,000 letters that described her dabbling in paranormal and seeing clairvoyance in attempts to connect with her husband.
Oh, okay. That's good.
So she never gave up. She was really trying.
No, that's good. So I take that back.
And the Admiralty was like, man, they have supplies for 3 years. And before the 3 years were up, she was like, search for them. You're so mean.
No, it's...
Okay. On August
She loved her husband.
She did. On August 23rd, 1850, the first signs or evidence are uncovered with the discovery of Franklin's first winter camp at Cape Riley. The camp was discovered by Captain Horatio Austin of the HMS Resolute. Nice. And Captain Erebus Omani of the HMS Assistance. The captains and the men looked desperately for a note along this camp, and they were tearing down cairns, trying to find notes that were left behind, but they didn't find anything.
Yeah.
There's exploring on land, and after 4 days, a breathless sailor comes running back to them with the news that they've found 3 graves on the island belonging to John Torrington, John Hartnell, and William Brine. But nothing else turned up. The HMS Resolute becomes trapped in ice and is abandoned. So the crew just boards with the assistants, HMS assistants, and they head back with no news other than they found. 1852, many ships had ventured out to the Arctic in what then turned out to be a multinational search, with even more ships becoming abandoned during the search.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So
if it happened to one, it's going to happen to all.
10 ships go out, 6 come back. So it's what's the cost now?
Yeah.
So after a while, they're just going to stop searching. It's too risky. They could just assume the worst.
Or it's going to be like, so we watched the show Oak Island, where there's a lot of previous searcher tunnels. Is it original searcher tunnel? Or is it, more recent?
Now
it's all mixed in.
Now they're like blending over evidence. It's like who left what. It's almost like too much traffic in a crime scene.
Yeah.
Now
get out of the crime scene.
Get out of the crime
walk
scene.
around
Keep it
the party.
up.
Yeah.
1852, a grand reward is again put into place. I think I said it was $1 million. It would technically be $2 million today for the 20,000 pounds.
Yeah,
for anyone who could find the Franklin expedition crew. So I said that one of the ships was the Resolute, and it had gotten stuck in ice. That was in 1850. So in 1852, an American whaler's ship found the Resolute.
Oh, okay.
Found it afloat and returned it back to England in good faith. So American whalers find this English ship, the Resolute, return it to England.
Treason.
From the timbers of this ship, Queen Elizabeth gifted a desk to the United States president.
Oh.
Which still sits in the Oval Office today.
Did not know that. That's awesome.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, it's real cool.
Okay. Beyond locating some early campsites used
Those are bonds that can't be broken. American England.
Yeah. So besides the campsites, nothing else is discovered of the crew and what their fate could be. Also that year, 1852, because they had found the grave sites of the 3 sailors who died first, John Hartnell's body is excavated in 1852 and was described by Sir Roderick Murchison of the R.M. Bromley in the following quote, saying that John Hartnell's body was perfectly preserved by the intense cold.
Yeah.
Exhibited no trace of scurvy or other malignant disease, but was manifesting that of a person who had died of consumption, a malady to which it was further known that the deceased was prone. So he died of consumption. That was the final cause for him.
What's consumption again?
It's like
is that like eating the tin?
It's like when people are coughing and then they're coughing up blood.
Oh.
It's like I don't know how to describe it because I've never had it.
I thought that was like tuberculosis.
So this is where it gets real. 1853 to 1854. The discovery of Franklin's fate was made by John Ray, who was given the award of £10,000 despite the opposition from Franklin's widow and Charles Dickens.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you why. So 6 years after the expedition was declared lost, a Hudson Bay fur trapper named John Ray was out still conducting searches, and he talks to a group of Inuit men,
Mm-hmm.
and they tell them about the fate of the Franklin expedition. The men from the Franklin expedition came upon the Inuit people during the last days of their life after they'd already lost their minds.
Oh.
The Inuit, who had never seen Europeans before, were terrified of what they described as a barely living group of zombies.
So that's not funny, but I can imagine the horror.
The Inuit nomads had come across streams of men that didn't seem to be right. Quote, maddened by scurvy, botulism, or desperation, they were raving in a language that the Inuit couldn't understand.
Makes sense.
In one case, hunters came across 2 Franklin expedition survivors who had been sleeping for 2 days in the hollow-out corpses of a seal.
Again, hardcore level of survival right there.
They were unrecognizable. They were so dirty, says Lena King-Miatuk, a resident of the Taloyo.
I would have never thought. Well, if you watch Star Wars, that's how Luke survives.
Yeah, true.
It must be common knowledge. That knowledge has been lost nowadays.
Mark Tutiak, a stepson of Nicholas Quaitinghuac. Oh, I think I did that one pretty good.
Yeah, well, one-time try.
Related a story of a group of Inuit who had encountered a small and hairy group of Franklin expedition men evacuating south. Later, these Inuit heard their people had seen more white people, a lot more people dying, and they were carrying human meat. In at least one case, Inuit nomads did attempt to help, but the white men were suspicious and wary of the Inuit. The Franklin party rejected the offers of food and clung to their belongings when the Inuit offered to trade. The men still, nevertheless, constructed them an igloo,
That's nice.
built it, and they built them an igloo and a fire and left them seals to eat.
That's
and
nice.
then hastily left. But the true horror of the encounter wouldn't be revealed until several months later. The Inuit had left in such a hurry from their first encounter that they had left behind several belongings.
Mm-hmm.
So when they thought that it was safe to go back, they went back and they found that the igloo was filled with corpses.
Oh.
And that the seals that they had left before were untouched. The Inuit people also, so they tell Ray this story, the trapper, of meeting the starving men, and he gives them relics from the Franklin expedition to kind of prove the validity of what he's saying. So Ray takes this story of potential cannibalism and suffering back to England, and Lady Jane Franklin
I don't want to hear about that.
Starts to smear this trapper's reputation, calling him a liar and like all this terrible things. And then somehow Charles Dickens gets involved, and he's saying that the Inuit people attacked and killed them all because he's just a hate machine. And I'm like, dang it, Charles Dickens.
He's like, I've been around the world. I know.
I don't think he had. I think he's
Not at this point.
Charles Dickens, the writer?
I'm always thinking of Darwin. Darn it.
Did Darwin go around the world?
Darwinism? Did he, evolution? I thought he went exploring like all the different
I don't
areas.
know. I don't know anything about Darwin other than he's not Charles Dickens.
You don't know anything about Darwin?
Progress of ape to man.
There you go. So he would do this whole...
Why can't you do that in... I don't know. I always thought that he was just like a book nerd.
Oh, now you got me questioned. Okay, got it. Author.
In 1852, John Hartnell's body was discovered and exhumed, but it was just reburied. And a letter doesn't reach home until 1854. A letter is dated May 1st, 1854, and it's addressed to Charles Hartnell, Thomas's younger brother. And it was a letter officially declaring John Hartnell deceased. Mm-hmm. But this is where I'm like, could you be any more heartless or any more cold-blooded. The letter says, I have to inform you that John Hartnell died on the 4th of January, 1846 in the debt.
Like a bitch.
No, pretty well. In debt to the crown, 117 pounds, 4 shillings, and 8 pence. Because of this debt, his family receives nothing.
Wow. Not
even a service medal until 1986.
That's a little low.
Almost like over 100 years later.
Government and their taxes, man.
Freaking government, man! Want to fight? So ornery.
Wow.
So, what happened? We can kind of surmise what happened.
Yeah.
But it's actually, it gets painted a little bit better in 1980 when a full excavation is made and discovery is
I'm kind of curious
made.
what else the wife did at the time to try to, I know you're talking about
Wenching.
not wenching, trying to summon her lost husband and figure out what was going on.
So it wasn't until 1980s that the party's remains were fully discovered. Many of the bones and skeleton remains that were recovered exhibited cuts and burns that would confirm the likelihood of cannibalism.
Yeah.
Autopsies from some of the discovered party reveals a grim outcome. The men were starving.
Mm-hmm.
Their rations were nearly spent, and what remained, because it had been so hastily packed by the canning company, were not cooked through thoroughly, leading to botulism. And all the lead soldering contaminated the food. Additionally,
they were screwed from the beginning.
And the piping for the ship's desalination was also lined with lead.
Oh.
So the crew was malnourished,
lead poisoning,
suffering from lead poisoning, which causes cramps, changes in behavior, headaches, vomiting, and fatigue.
Crazy
and
Europeans.
Left untreated, lead poisoning damages the kidneys and central nervous system, leading to seizures, unconsciousness, coma, and death. So, weak from starvation and lead poisoning, the crew sets out on an 800-mile trek across the Arctic wasteland.
So when you are complaining about your day, or if your coffee's cold, or just something,
just think about
just
it.
First world issues, right? Or just issues that just aren't a big deal.
Yeah.
Think about these people and what they were going through. That's horrible.
Screw you that you ran out of creamer for your coffee this morning. Screw you.
But coffee doesn't taste good without creamer.
That you had to crab walk to get more toilet paper. You know, so what? You had to catch your cat throw up on a plate.
I had to drag, I think, like 10 bags of grocery in one arm one day.
What? Yeah.
And that's tiring.
My shoulders still hurt. Weak from starvation and lead poisoning, they started to slowly die along this 800-mile trek. And as people passed, it's presumed that they were either put into the sledge and continued to be pulled, or they were left where they were underneath a tent and with the intention of coming back to retrieve them. All of the men died before reaching their final destination, and their remains were found scattered among 35 different locations along the route of retreat.
Did they say how far that 800 miles they made it? Was it like 50 miles?
I don't even think they were close.
Ugh.
Yeah. 25% of the human bones that were discovered exhibited cut marks associated with butchery and dismemberment.
What is your thought on the whole cannibalism piece? Obviously,
survival of the fittest.
I mean, I would not blame
I don't blame them. I don't blame them, except that, okay, so some bones were found cracked open and boiled to extract the caloric-rich bone marrow inside. Some bones show cut marks on the palms and fingers as defensive wounds, indicating that the party member was not dead before they were being resorted to being eaten.
Yeah, who knows what was going on during that time, right?
So it's like
infighting, craziness, someone,
I can't even imagine. But it's like, this is kind of painting a picture. You kind of like...
Yeah, some tough decisions had to be made.
Some very tough decisions. It's made pretty clear that cannibalism was a main issue. And so they start, as they're retracing the paths of the Franklin expedition, they're finding a body here And then a mile later, another body. And then another 2-3 miles, 3 bodies.
Yeah.
And at that one particular location where the Inuit said that they had built an igloo were 35 bodies.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Do you think it's suspicious that they didn't touch those seals?
No. They probably didn't know what a seal was, if it was edible.
Well, I mean, you had whalers at that time. So I think they did. I wonder if it's one of those things where you're you can't even cook the food.
You can't even ration.
Yeah. Ration or cook the food or maintain the fire or just you're looking now and now you're just torturing me. I could see the food, but I can't eat it.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Or they're so at that point, even if they do get it, it's
crazed. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I kept thinking, I'm like, why didn't the Inuit people help them more?
Okay.
So I was like, why? But
I didn't realize that they said that they'd never seen Europeans before.
Yeah, but ultimately, what it comes down to, because like the Inuit people, they are thrive. That's the condition that they live in. They thrive. They don't. They have.
Yeah. They have communities.
Their first interaction with other people look horrific, and they're probably not being very receptive. The European people.
Yeah.
Some of the recounts that the Inuit people give is that they tried to help, but their efforts were rejected aggressively.
Look at them clutching their purses.
Yeah. They were saying that the rejection of their offers, the language barrier, and that a lot of the Inuit people, especially the ones who had come across the men sleeping in the seals, were terrified of
I can
these
imagine.
people. So they were scared. So I don't really blame them for not. I mean, it's just a bad situation all around.
It's just like us being near Portland and you see a bunch of like some of the Portlandians of different stature walking down.
Oh my goodness.
Stay back, kids.
I don't want to be
back.
that person, but
We do love Oregon, though.
Yeah, we do. Some of the inhabitants are questionable at best. So this is all during the 1980s. They're able to retrace the steps and recover a lot of the remains. But the problem is a lot of them were unidentified.
Yeah.
Especially if you're joining a ship crew at a young age.
All you're doing is putting an X.
Yeah, and you're signing your name with an X. So it's not really known who they all were, so a lot of the bodies are still there.
Yeah.
Same with like treks to like K9 and what are the other?
Yeah, Mount Everest.
Mount Everest. If you die in the mountain, sometimes you stay there.
Yeah, it's hard to take it back.
So a few of the bodies were able to be identified through artifacts on their clothing. It was really common for people to have their initials sewn or their names sewn into their clothing.
Yeah.
And so some of them were able to be identified that way. And in turn, their families would have to arrange to have their body brought home.
That's messed up. Oh, we found your body here. Now your family has to
You have to get it. We're not going to do it, but you're going to do it.
I roll.
So part of the excavation process involved in 1984 the exhuming of John Torrington's remains. His barely decomposed body shocked scientists who exhumed it. Torrington's body was perfectly preserved and his eyes were open, looking straight at the excavation crew. With the consent of Torrington's descendants in England, a crew led by archaeologist Owen Beatty commenced their work on Torrington's grave. They dug down 1.5 meters into the frozen ground to reach the coffin. Upon opening the coffin, they were struck by how well the body was preserved. Scientists melted the ice covering Torrington slowly to avoid the damage. Further, scientists suggest that John Torrington had been very sick because he only weighed 85 pounds at the time of his death, which led them to surmise that he had died of pneumonia.
None of this sounds good. It's like Oregon Trail all over again. Like you died
in worse conditions.
Yes, in worse conditions.
Worse conditions.
You died of dysentery.
In 1986, they investigated Brine's remains, Brine, Braines, revealed that he was severely emaciated at his time of death with an advanced case of tuberculosis, which had resulted in angular kyphosis, or a sharp twisting of his spine. He was buried in 3 shirts, as well as a shroud and a red patterned handkerchief that was placed over his face. Brian's body showed symptoms of tuberculosis and lead poisoning prior to his death, and he was one of the first to die. and he was already exhibiting lead poisoning.
And we're not even talking about just the medical suckiness of all of this. I'm just thinking of the clothing for Arctic at that time. Just throw on 3 shirts.
3 shirts.
You'll be fine.
They did have like
wool,
thicker clothing. They had like pretty heavy duty coats, but they were not equipped for the cold at all.
I don't care how much wool you put on it. It's just miserable.
They fully anticipated being at sea during Arctic winter, not traversing 800 miles across land. They were not equipped. In 2008, Crozier's hometown of Bainbridge hosted a memorial event, which included a service of remembrance and thanksgiving at the Church of Holy Trinity, which was attended by more than 100 descendants of Crozier and the other officers of the Franklin's Lost Expedition.
So closure.
So I'm like, that was really nice. 100 descendants of those people. I thought that was pretty awesome. In 2014, the wreck of the Erebus was finally discovered, 36 feet deep in the ocean.
Jeez.
Off the coast of King William's Island. And then in 2 years after that, 2016, 45 miles away, the wreck of the Terror was discovered. So both ships have been found. And it's thought that the ships eventually were de-iced and drifted apart.
Yeah.
And that's why they were found so much further apart. They are...
Yeah, but I think that that just proves that expedition, because I don't even think even currently there's no route.
There's still...
Right? Because I don't think it's feasible.
It's been traversed, but it's just really too dangerous.
Yeah.
So like I said, 1905 was the first...
Is when they did
successful passage through the Northwest. Ugh. But I think that I read that somewhere that it's just not feasible. It's just not...
Well, I think that's when they started getting more metal hulls.
Yeah. Well, now there's planes, passage across land is easier.
No, but just like the terrain, I know they're looking for water, but you have just ice, and that ice makes it almost like a land.
Yeah. So I just think it's kind of ironic that after all this like tragedy, all the ships lost, it's like, man, we got planes now.
No, because you still got to send cargo.
Well, let's go the long way.
Just go through Panama.
Yeah.
There you go. Panama Canal.
Yeah, it's just so sad. So they started the exploration process of the sunken vessels, looking hopefully for more clues and more evidence to kind of solidify the outcome of the party. But due to our friend COVID, in 2020, the expedition has been postponed.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't know this when I started researching. But there's a show on AMC that came out in 2018 called The Terror, and it covers this story.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen it yet. I can't vouch for it.
Well, now you don't even need to.
I'm going to watch it. I'm going to watch it to check for accuracy because I'm a scientist and
researchers, investigators.
Anyway, I thought it was really, once I started researching, I couldn't stop. And I actually started researching.
When you were researching, were you kind of secretly hoping for them? Even though you knew the complete outcome?
I was hoping for Yetis.
Oh.
I was actually a little bit hoping that the Inuit really did attack him. I wanted drama. I wanted pizzazz. But I think
there's a lot of drama just in suffering.
I think that the trying to traverse the Arctic wasteland.
Well, it's either that or you just sit
starving.
Because
or wait it out. What would you do, given the option? It's actually theorized, or one statement, and I couldn't replicate this statement anywhere, so I didn't include it. But it was 1852, I think. Inuits discovered the Terror trapped in ice, went on board to investigate it, and found 5 or 6 sailors dead in their bed.
Yeah.
Which would indicate that they stayed behind. But the thing is, the Inuit said that the fire was still warm, and the men were all dead. So they had just died. Or at least one of them, Yeah,
someone. But I could see how some would still stay, right? Because you still have people who too sick to even travel.
Or the guy with the gimpy leg.
Or they just say, you know what, you do you, we're staying here. We're not going to go there. That's crazy.
Yeah. First of all, you're Irish. Crozier.
We love you, Irish. You're actually some of our listeners.
Yeah, we do. We appreciate you. What would you... I don't know if I would go.
I would probably hold tight.
If I didn't...
Not 800.
800
Not 800.
miles. I can't even imagine, though. All those men, over 100 people. Do we stay here and die, or do we go and die?
Well, I'm going to get all the officers to lock up all the other non-officers. And we're just
Mutiny. Mutiny.
No, not mutiny. We're going to I'm getting kind of hungry. Let's get John over here.
You
and then
initiate cannibalism before it's a problem?
Well,
that's a problem.
We're rationalizing. We're rationing.
Rationing? John today, Steve tomorrow.
And whoever that young boy is, whatever his name is.
You wouldn't do like hunting party?
We would do both.
I would attempt at like fishing first.
Well, yes.
I would try to catch a penguin with my bare hands.
I'm sure I would try to do some of that stuff. So
I don't know. But anyway, so
nice.
I thought it was really
well. Thanks for sharing that, because there's a lot of things that we don't really hear about for a lot of these expeditions.
You don't hear about the side stories. You don't hear about all this just horrible.
Here's my final thoughts.
Yeah.
I think I would not want to do this, but there's some who are. You never want to be the first to explore something. It's
like the first edition of things.
Yes, it never goes well. And I know we're talking about, they went through the north and northwest and trying to find out all the suckiness. I'm just thinking of all the poor people in the future who are going to start out and go to Mars and go elsewhere. Now, I appreciate Mars. I know.
They're not meant to survive.
I know. But there's a difference between not meant to survive of natural because they can't return. So therefore, they're going to die up there. But like misery, like what you just discovered, yes. Right? Like the air thing explodes and they're on their, those type of like horrible scenarios.
These people don't know.
That's what I would be.
When I think of like colonizing Mars, I think of their face exploding, like in Total Recall.
So that's my takeaway.
When I think of exploring the Arctic, I will forever think of this.
Yes.
Eating everybody, going mad.
Yes.
Sleeping inside of a seal.
Those are fun. Maybe smile. I was thinking of Star Wars a little bit. So, a little bit of silver lining. No, so that's why.
Silver lining? That was your silver lining?
Yeah. Star Wars.
The death of 134.
No, I did not say that. I said
reminded you of Star
sleeping
Wars.
In a seal.
It made me really leery of canned food.
Yeah.
And I know times have changed, but I don't want to eat a canned good ever again.
Science
did them dirty. All right.
I don't trust all these things because lead's good for you.
Yeah, lead's great. Met my buddy Lead. Do your body good.
Yeah, be wary.
Be super wary.
All right. Well.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. I hope you liked the Expedition. If you want to contact us, you can send us an email at stopthinkingwithyourbutt@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram or Twitter, Stop Thinking With Your Butt, and Stop Thinking WYB.
Please, please, please. I know we have a lot of listeners who are trying to reach out to us. We are very active on Twitter. We're active on the other platforms, but it seems like we get a lot more discussions and individual messages and so on. So I appreciate everyone who is calling into us or listening to us, messaging us,
Twitter.
reviewing us. Please keep those reviews up because it always helps us out wherever platform you are on. And with that, stay curious
and stop thinking with your butt.
Out.